Chapter 3. Some things need to settle first. The moment Tony stepped onto the bus, something inside him dropped. Not a small drop, but a full, stomach-to-the-floor kind of fall. The kind that made him feel like he'd walk straight back into a loop he didn't know how to break. Mr. Maxwell's voice kept replaying in his mind. It didn't fade, and it didn't soften. It just looped, steady, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The bus groaned as it pulled away from the curb, and Tony slid into a cracked vinyl seat that felt like it hadn't been soft since before he was born. It was hot, stiff, and completely unforgiving. The air inside was thick, filled with the smell of sweat, diesel, and too many bodies breathing the same tired air. He heard a baby crying somewhere behind him, and then he noticed a man up front coughing into his sleeve, the sound rough enough to make Tony flinch. Everything felt too close, like the whole bus was pressing in on him. He leaned his forehead against the window, hoping the cool glass would settle the storm inside him. It didn't. Nothing did. The ride felt painfully slow. Every bump rattled the bus, and rattled him. He couldn't tell if it was the suspension or the thoughts he couldn't shut off. His fingers tapped against his leg, restless and uneven, like they were trying to outrun the weight in his chest. He just wanted to get home. He wanted space, air, somewhere quiet. But he was stuck in that metal box, and Mr. Maxwell's words pressed on him like something he wasn't ready to carry. By the time the bus slowed at his stop, Tony was already on his feet. He stepped off the moment the doors opened, desperate for air that didn't feel borrowed. The cool air hit his face. For a second, he thought it might help. It didn't. So he ran. He didn't think about it. His body just moved, fast and hard, like he was trying to outrun something that lived inside him. The sidewalk was cracked and uneven, but he didn't slow down. His breath came fast, his arms pumped, and his legs burned. Street lights flickered overhead, stretching long shadows across the pavement. A dog barked behind a fence, sharp enough to jolt him forward. A porch swing creaked somewhere in the dark. He didn't really hear it. He just felt it, the way he felt the pounding in his chest and the echo of Mr. Maxwell's voice.
I had to hide.
He ran down Castlebrook Drive, past the dip in the pavement where the air always smelled like honeysuckle. His foot clipped the curb. He stumbled, caught himself, and kept going. The houses blurred. Porches, mailboxes, glowing windows. He knew every one of them. But tonight they felt different, like they didn't recognize him. His chest tightened. Not from the run, but from something deeper.
I saw things I still have nightmares about.
And then, without warning, he wasn't on Brookview Drive anymore. He was inside his daydream at age 8, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, elbows on his knees. The TV flickered in the corner, but he wasn't watching it. He was watching his dad. Dad stood by the window, one hand on the sill, the other holding a photograph. Tony knew that picture. Him at 4. Big cheeks, missing teeth, mouth open, making noise. He'd had a speech problem back then. His dad didn't know he was watching. His shoulders were squared like always, but his fingers shook a little as he stared at the photo. His lips moved, but Tony couldn't hear the words. From the kitchen, his mother's voice floated in. Just keep doing what you're doing. Tony will get there. Just have faith, babe. Dad didn't answer right away. He rubbed the edge of the photo with his thumb, slow and careful. Then he whispered, quiet, almost afraid of the words.
I don't know if he'll ever learn how to speak, or if I'll be able to keep from getting frustrated.
Tony didn't understand any of it. He was 4. He just watched the way his dad's jaw tightened and the way his shoulders rose and fell like he was holding something heavy. His dad flipped the photo over, stared at the blank back, then slid it into the drawer, slow, careful, like it might break. Then Tony's foot abruptly slammed onto the pavement, snapping him back into the present. He stumbled, sucked in a breath, and kept running. because now he was carrying something bigger than him, bigger than 8th grade, and bigger than anything he'd ever tried to hold. So he didn't slow down until his house came into view. That's when he knew exactly who he needed to give it to. Even though his legs were burning and his chest tight, he kept pushing forward like momentum alone was carrying him. By the time he reached the front steps, he wasn't thinking. He was just moving on instinct. He burst through the door, breathless and wired with urgency.
Dad, where are you?
His voice shot through the quiet house, bouncing off walls that felt too still, too calm for the storm inside him. He hurried from room to room, his sneakers scuffing against the floor as he searched.
Dad?
The silence pressed in on him, heavy and unsettling. He needed to tell him what had happened. He needed his dad to understand the weight sitting on his shoulders, the weight he hadn't asked for, but couldn't shake. Then he heard it, a soft creak from down the hall.
Yeah, son, I'm in the kitchen.
Tony exhaled sharply, a mix of relief and frustration. Then he moved toward the sound. His pulse was still racing when he stepped into the kitchen. His dad sat at the table with his fingers curled around a steaming cup of coffee. He looked calm, too calm, like he had all the time in the world. The scent of roasted coffee hung in the air, mixing with the faint smell of dish soap from the drying rack. Outside, the world moved, cars passing, voices drifting through the open window. But inside, everything felt frozen. Tony swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath, but he couldn't. His dad lifted his mug and gave him a look, a familiar one, the one that usually meant Tony forgot the trash or he didn't finish his chores. But tonight, that look hit differently. It made the urgency in Tony's chest twist into something sharper. Tony was thinking,
How could I be carrying something that felt like history? Something that belonged in a museum or a textbook, while my dad sat there like nothing had changed?
"You wanted to ask."
Dad, do you understand how big this is? Do you know what I just heard?
But the words stuck. Monte sat his cup down with deliberate ease, his expression steady and unreadable. He didn't flinch at Tony's frantic energy. He didn't rush to fill the silence. He just watched him, patient, grounded, like a man watching a storm roll in, utterly unbothered by its arrival. That was his dad, cool under pressure, steady no matter what. But Tony? A whole different story as he waited for Tony to speak.
Breathe, Tony. Breathe.
It wasn't a suggestion. It was a lifeline. Tony tried, but the air still felt thin, like he couldn't pull enough of it into his lungs. Monte didn't push, and he didn't demand an explanation. He just patiently waited and let the silence stretch, giving Tony room to settle, or at least try. Then, finally,
Start from the beginning, Tony.
at that moment, Monty's thoughts of reprimanding him, every undone chore, every missed responsibility, were put on hold. The forgotten trash, the dirty dishes, the late-night video game marathons. None of it mattered now. His focus was on how Tony felt in that moment. Tony nodded, barely aware of the movement. He felt like he was standing on the edge of something, and his dad's steady gaze was the only thing keeping him from falling. Tony took a breath, another. Then he began.
I was at the bus stop, and my friends and I were just messing around. We were joking about sitting at the front of the bus. Nothing serious, just joking.
Monty didn't interrupt. He didn't even blink. But Tony felt the weight of his attention. Solid, steady, unshakable.
There was this older man, Mr. Maxwell. He overheard us, and he interrupted.
Tony swallowed, the memory tightening in his chest.
He said, "Boys, don't you realize that joking about sitting at the front of the bus disrespects everything Mrs. Rosa Parks did and everything she stood for?"
Tony's breath hitched. The words echoed again. Heavier now, more real. Tony gripped the back of the chair, grounding himself.
He told us she was a key figure in the civil rights movement, that she refused to give up her seat in 1955. And the way he said it, it wasn't like a history lesson. It was like he'd lived it.
The words felt heavier than facts. They were history. A fight Tony hadn't seen, but was beginning to understand. It all came into focus for him. The meaning of her actions. The years of struggle that followed. It all came crashing down on him like a heavy stone. A burden he now carried with a new set of eyes. Monte exhaled. Slow. Quiet. And that's when Tony felt something shift in the room.
It was a comment that caught us off guard, because it came from someone we always saw as a silent observer.
Tony could still see him. Mr. Maxwell leaning forward, the afternoon light catching his arm, dust floating in the air between them like time had slowed down. His hands were clasped together, knuckles pale, veins raised like roots breaking through dry earth. But his voice carried something lived and painful. It was a wound that never fully healed. Tony remembered him saying,
When you think you're just asking questions, you realize questions have roots, and roots grow. They don't stay quiet. Sooner or later, they start talking.
The words didn't just land. They settled. Deep. And they didn't feel new. Tony had heard them before. Not in the same shape, but with the same weight. From his dad. Not in speeches, in silences. Like the way he held that photo at the window, and whenever his eyes drifted inward. Or in the way he would try and pass his legacy to Tony without it looking like a lesson. But Tony wasn't ready to carry it. Until now. The air in the kitchen felt thick, like the room itself was holding its breath. Monte held Tony's gaze, patient and steady, waiting for him to understand the enormity of what he'd just said. For the first time, Tony felt it. Not as history, but as something alive, something personal, something that had been waiting for him. The conversation reshaped everything. Past struggles, present challenges, and the road ahead. Monte finally blinked, finally moved. But still, he didn't speak. Not yet. But Tony, he finally got it. See, some things just need to settle first, because some truths need time. But as Tony stood there, breath unsteady and heart still racing, he realized something else. Something he hadn't been ready to face until now. Monte wasn't silent because he didn't care. He was silent because he knew what was coming next. And Tony wasn't sure he was ready to hear it.